Have you ever believed that a single small act on a cold, rainy morning could change your entire life? A man pulled over when he saw a shivering dog by the side of the road. He thought he was just helping a lost animal. What he didn't know was that the dog belonged to a billionaire CEO, and that one simple human moment, something he thought was no big deal, opened the door to a whole new chapter, one he never dared to dream of. If you believe in second chances, in quiet miracles that find us when we least expect them, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. Share your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button, because today's story just might touch your heart in ways you didn't see coming. That morning, Willow Bend wasn't just soaked with rain. It was heavy, with things no one dared to say out loud. An old pickup truck crept around the tight bend on Maple Hollow Drive. Behind the wheel was Daniel Pierce, a single dad, eyes sunken from too many sleepless nights. He eased past a pothole, careful not to spill the lukewarm coffee swaying in a paper cup. From the back seat came the soft, steady breathing of his son, Lucas, fast asleep in his booster seat. A quiet soundtrack to a morning full of quiet dread. There was a plumbing job waiting on the other side of town, but what weighed heavier on Daniel's mind was the rent, 5 days overdue and no miracle in sight. Then suddenly, something moved. A streak of gray, soaked and trembling, almost invisible through the curtain of rain. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. His pulse kicked up. A dog, a German shepherd, soaked fur clinging to its frame, limping slightly, and staring right at him. It wasn't begging, it was waiting, as if hoping that someone, anyone, might choose to stop. Daniel had spent a lifetime driving past hard things, but this time, he hit the brakes. As he stepped out, the rain slapped his face, like the world reminding him, there's no room for softness anymore. But those eyes, deep, calm, searching, made him kneel. No collar, no growl, just a gentle touch, a cold nose against his palm. And somehow, it cracked something open. I'll call you Titan, he muttered, as if naming the dog could somehow hold both of them together. Keep them from falling apart one more time. What Daniel didn't know was that stopping for that dog wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the moment, quiet and unremarkable, that would lead him back to everything he thought he'd lost forever. Cedar Bluff Cabin used to be just a shelter. Now, it was slowly becoming something more, a home. It took only 3 days for Titan to stop being a guest. He curled up faithfully at the foot of Lucas's bed, ears twitching whenever the boy stirred in his sleep. And then, something strange began to happen. Lucas, the little boy who used to whisper his mother's name in restless dreams, started whispering to Titan instead. About old dreams. About the spaceship he still wanted to build. About the pie his mom once burned. But how they all laughed anyway. Daniel stood in the doorway, just listening, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel like a night watchman trapped in a house that no longer felt like his. Sunday morning arrived, and the scent of pancakes and laughter bounced off the wooden walls, like someone had flipped the switch back on. Titan, wearing the red flannel bandana Lucas tied around his neck, sat perfectly still, waiting for that first fallen pancake scrap, as if it were sacred. And when Lucas tripped while running through the cabin, Titan didn't bark. He just lowered his head and let the boy bury himself in his fur, without needing a single word. The kitchen that once felt cold now carried warmth in every little crack in the wall. The dining table with 3 chairs always had a fourth presence now. A small ceramic bowl tucked neatly under the table next to Lucas's feet. Daniel cleared a corner of the living room and set up a reading lamp. Lucas said Titan-like bedtime stories. Then came Monday morning, and Daniel caught himself doing something he hadn't done in years, whistling while washing the dishes. It wasn't because everything was suddenly okay, but because a small part of him had finally stopped resisting hope. No one had come forward to claim the dog, but to Daniel and Lucas, Titan wasn't the lost dog anymore. He was the missing piece, the one they never knew they were waiting for. Daniel printed 6 copies, exactly the number he could afford, with the last of the crumpled bills in his wallet. The flyers were simple. Bold letters read, Found. German Shepherd. Gentle. Friendly. No ID. Beneath it, a blurry photo of Titan curled on the sofa, head tilted, eyes lifted, like he was listening to a secret only he could hear. Lucas came along for every stop across Willow Bend. From the community board at the Springdale Library to the leaning utility pole outside the town's oldest gas station, the boy pressed each flyer with the solemn focus of a soldier on a sacred mission. "We'll find Titan's family," he said, "if they deserve him." And he tightened the tape like sealing a promise. Daniel didn't know whether to smile or fear what he was secretly wishing for. Each night, he checked his phone, and when it didn't ring, some part of him felt relieved. But just as quickly, another part whispered guilt. What if someone out there was missing Titan? What if he belonged to another child? Clutching a photo and waiting for a knock on the door that never came? One evening, after closing his laptop for the 5th time, empty-handed from yet another search on pet forums, Daniel turned around and saw Titan lying beneath Lucas's dangling legs, head resting on a pillow, eyes half closed, breathing slow, as if there was no better place left in the world to go. That night, Daniel opened a notebook he hadn't touched since the day his wife passed. He scribbled quietly, "We can't keep anything forever, but maybe we're allowed to hope." And somehow in that quiet contradiction, as he tried to do the right thing, his heart began to pray that no one would ever call for Titan at all. What Daniel didn't know was that someone had already seen the flyer and was quietly watching from afar. At the very top floor of Monroe Heights Tower, everything was perfect. Every book aligned just right. Every painting curated from private galleries with surgical precision. But inside the mind of Scarlett Monroe, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, everything was unraveling. Like the blankets Titan used to curl into every night, her thoughts were in knots. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Drones had swept the forest surrounding the estate. The security team had combed through every gate camera. Staff had been questioned so relentlessly, some had taken leave. But still, nothing. Titan had vanished, like a secret quietly stolen from the palm of her hand. Scarlett unlocked her phone and scrolled through a folder named My Boy. Titan with his signature blue bandana. Titan sprawled across the office sofa. The only place she'd allowed herself to laugh since her father died. He was the last living piece of the man who taught her that loyalty wasn't something written into contracts, but something you saw in the eyes of a creature incapable of lying. And now, nothing. Scarlett? Corey, her most trusted assistant, stood at the doorway, his voice soft, as if afraid to touch a wound still bleeding. "There's a post on a local forum near Willow Bend. We can't be sure, but the photo looks like Titan." Scarlett nearly snatched the phone from his hands. The image was side-angled, a little blurry, but she knew those eyes. Calm, trusting, like he'd found somewhere new to belong. Her fingers trembled, but for the first time in days, her chest didn't feel frozen. Scarlett set the phone down on her desk. She didn't call, not yet, not because she didn't want to, but because something inside her asked the harder question. If the person who had Titan now was truly good to him, did she have the courage to show up, not to take him back, but to ask if maybe there was still a place for her too? Scarlett Monroe drove alone. No security detail, no chauffeur, no iPad buzzing with back-to-back meetings. Just her, a black SUV, and a shaky Google Maps route guiding her to Maple Hollow Drive. A winding little street lined with moss-covered cabins, a world away from the steel and glass precision her life was built on. She parked 3 houses down. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this was real. And then she saw him, Titan. There he was in the front yard, chasing a bright blue rubber ball across a sun-dappled patch of grass. A little boy, 6, maybe 7, laughed so hard he almost toppled over as Titan barreled toward the ball, skidding through a bed of dry leaves. His tail wagged wildly, like this was the only place he'd ever belonged, like joy itself had found a heartbeat. Scarlett didn't get out of the car. She just sat there, watching through the windshield. No tears, no sound, but something inside her cracked open, quietly, completely. Not because Titan had forgotten her, but because he was happy. Daniel stepped onto the porch, sleeves rolled, hair tousled, exhausted maybe, but peaceful. He didn't call Titan, didn't interrupt. He just watched, with a smile warm enough to soften the edge of autumn. And in that still moment, Scarlett understood. She wasn't the only one who had once needed Titan to survive something that nearly broke her. And maybe, just maybe, if she was brave enough, she hadn't come here to take him back. Maybe she had come to ask if there was space to belong. Just not today. She turned the car around and drove away in silence. But for the first time in a long, long time, her heart knew where home might be. The first time Scarlett knocked on the door of Cedar Bluff, the sun was shining. But inside her chest, it was still raining. Daniel opened the door, hands dusted in cookie flour, midway through baking one of Lucas's half-made-up, half-real recipes. Standing in front of him was a woman with neatly tied hair, a simple wool coat, and a look in her eyes that was equal parts certain and lost. "I saw the flyer," she said, "and I think I've found something I'm not sure I should take back." Titan saw her first. He leapt off the couch and charged straight to the door, crashing into Scarlett's legs like there had never been a single day apart. She dropped to her knees, arms wrapped tight around him, face buried in his fur, like someone holding onto a memory too sacred to let slip. From the kitchen, Lucas peeked around the corner, hair tousled, a wooden spoon still in his hand. "Dad, is that Titan's mom?" Daniel gave a quiet nod, but his eyes didn't hold tension. Just something calm, understanding. They sat on the porch later, coffee in chipped ceramic mugs, watching Lucas throw a stick again and again. Titan dashing after it, tail wagging like joy itself had taken root, as if he'd never known what it meant to be left behind. Scarlett said nothing for a while, then softly, almost like asking permission, "I don't want to take him back. I just want to come by. Sometimes, if that's not too strange." Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at Lucas, now doubled over in laughter as Titan chased his own shadow in wild circles, then turned back to her. "We don't have much here," he said, "but if you ever need a place to just breathe, this door isn't locked." Scarlett lowered her head. Her lips trembled. But this time, not from holding back. Sometimes family isn't something we're born into. It's something we choose. And that day she chose to stay, not as a guest, but as someone finding her way back to belonging. Love didn't arrive like lightning. It crept in slowly, into the tiny cracks of ordinary days. Scarlett never said, "I'll come by on Wednesday," but every Wednesday she was there, sometimes with a clumsy tin of baked oatmeal cookies, sometimes just a hand-stitched scarf for Titan. No reason, no invitation, just presence. Daniel never asked why, but he started cooking an extra portion, folding another napkin, dusting off the old chair in the corner of the table, as if it had never been forgotten. They never named what was happening between them. No one said, "We're dating." But every morning when Scarlett stood in that small kitchen, sleeves rolled up, rinsing dishes beside Daniel, and Lucas shouted from the living room, "Dad, Titan's hiding the stick again!" There was something warm, something right, and it didn't need a label. She told him about her father, a man who loved bonsai trees more than billion-dollar contracts. He told her about the first time he tried to bake cookies for Lucas and nearly set the oven on fire. They laughed. But there were silences too, and in those silences, no one felt empty. Daniel started sketching again, old truck designs, plans for a garage, with a small rescue corner for dogs like Titan. Scarlett brought her father's fountain pen, placed it in his hand, a gift with no wrapping and no need for words. There were no rings, no 5-year plans, just a quiet glance, a soft touch of hands after the last dish was rinsed, and the quiet knowing that for the first time, neither of them had to be strong alone. Love wasn't loud. But that morning in the little kitchen at Cedar Bluff, it was blooming. That night, Lucas fell asleep early, curled up with Titan on the couch, breathing softly like a lullaby set to rhythm. Daniel washed the dishes alone, the kitchen bathed in warm yellow light. Faded t-shirt, Titan's shadow resting at his feet, breathing slow and steady. Everything felt too peaceful. He grabbed the remote, just to fill the silence, to quiet the thoughts swirling behind his tired eyes. He didn't know that this small, ordinary gesture was about to shatter the world he had slowly been rebuilding with his bare hands. On the TV screen, beneath cold stage lights and towering glass, was a face he knew too well, too deeply, Scarlett Monroe, but not the one in a cozy knit scarf or the one with the warm laugh in his cluttered little kitchen. No, this was a woman with her hair pulled into a sharp bun, in a charcoal gray suit, eyes like steel, voice precise as a blade, delivering a keynote on global humanitarian AI expansion to hundreds of investors and millions of viewers around the world. Daniel froze. The camera shifted angles. A caption appeared in bold, Scarlett Monroe, CEO and founder of Monroe Technologies. Net worth, $2.3 billion. The glass slipped from Daniel's hand, shattered against the floor. And in his mind, everything started playing backwards, like a film in reverse. The slightly burned cookies, her sheepish laugh. I'm not very good with tech. The hesitant glance when Lucas asked what she did for work. He wasn't angry that she was wealthy. He was hurt, because she'd hidden it. All this time she had entered his life like any ordinary woman, and he had believed it. Now he didn't know who he was in her story. Someone she chose, or someone she pitied. Daniel turned off the TV. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It wasn't gentle. It was the hollow ache of a heart breaking quietly in the place it thought was finally safe. Scarlett disappeared without a word. No text, no apple pie, no familiar knock on the door each Sunday morning. Just an empty seat at the table and a folded blanket Titan used to curl up on every afternoon. Daniel didn't blame her. He just cleaned, worked, cooked, answered Lucas's questions with tired smiles and quiet pats on the head. But Lucas, he wasn't like the grown-ups. He didn't know how to let go so easily. One evening, Daniel walked into the living room and saw his son sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by sheets of blank paper like he was planning some secret mission. He wasn't drawing robots or sketching Titan with super hearing ears. He was writing letters, carefully folding each one like he was wrapping a tiny piece of his heart inside. "What are you doing, buddy?" Daniel asked softly. Lucas didn't look up. "I'm writing to Miss Scarlett," he said. His voice wavered a little. "Not to ask her to take Titan back, just so she know we miss her." He paused, eyes focused. "She didn't tell the truth, but she made the worst cookies ever and still made you eat them. She fell asleep on the couch while I read stories. And Titan doesn't lie on the blanket she gave him anymore. He's waiting for her." Daniel couldn't speak. Lucas stood, tucked the letter into an envelope. No sender, no address. Just 3 crooked words scrawled on the front. "Come back soon." The next day, father and son drove to the next town over. Together, they slipped the letter into the only mailbox outside the old library. Daniel knew there was a good chance no one would ever read it. But he also knew some things need to be written down so the heart can finally breathe again. Morning sunlight filtered through the trees on Maple Hollow Drive, slipping past the curtains of the little kitchen at Cedar Bluff, spilling across the 3-chair table where Titan lay half asleep, and Lucas was quietly coloring in his half-finished astronaut book. Daniel stood by the counter, brewing coffee, eyes still carrying the weight of too many nights without sleep. Then, a knock. 3 soft taps, slow, gentle, but enough to make his heart stop for just a moment. Lucas looked up, eyes bright. Titan sprang to his feet with a single bark, rushing toward the door like he'd just heard a voice he could never forget. Daniel opened it. Scarlett was standing there. No sleek car, no assistant, no tailored armor of her public life. Just a woman with her hair down, holding a pie, This one slightly cracked on top, but warm and laced with the scent of cinnamon, and a look in her eyes more honest than ever before. "I didn't bring a reason," she said softly. "Just a pie and an apology, if you're still willing to hear one." Daniel said nothing, but Titan had already pushed his head into her legs, and Lucas ran straight into her arms like she had never left at all. And for the first time in weeks, the house filled with laughter again. Scarlett blinked away tears. "Lucas wrote me a letter. Did you know that?" Daniel nodded. He didn't need an address. He just believed that if someone really cared, they'd find their way back. Scarlett's breath caught. "Do you forgive me?" she asked, and voice trembling like the first wind of spring. Daniel looked at the pie, at his son, now wrapped around Titan, grinning ear to ear, and he smiled. "I started baking again yesterday," he said, "but no one burns it quite as perfectly as you do." And just like that, a door once tightly shut opened again. Not because of grand gestures, not because of perfect words, but because one woman came back with nothing but truth in her eyes and love in her hands. There was no ribbon cutting, no speeches, no cameras flashing, just a hand-painted wooden sign hanging on the front of a small building by the woods. Pine Creek Repair and Rescue Center, a place to mend what's been broken. Daniel stood at the entrance of the new garage, his work shirt still smudged with a streak of blue paint. Next to him was Scarlett, wearing a simple checkered shirt, sunglasses dangling from the collar, and flour on her hands from the early morning. She was still learning how to bake apple pie without burning it. Lucas ran loops around the yard, Titan tugging gently at the leash, followed by 3 newly rescued strays, their tails wagging like they were singing the world's silliest welcome song. Scarlett had left Monroe Technologies 3 weeks ago, not because she was disillusioned, but because she'd finally found what had always been missing: a place to love without a blueprint, a family without a business plan. She didn't cry when she signed the resignation papers, but when she saw Lucas teaching Titan how to shake hands under the sun, and Daniel carefully attaching nameplates to each dog's crate, she knew she had chosen right. "What do we have?" Daniel asked, standing beside her at the front door on opening day. Scarlett smiled, fingers gently slipping into his. "We've got a mechanic who listens, a little boy who never stops believing, a dog who refuses to give up, and a woman learning to love again from the very beginning." Daniel nodded, resting his hand on the old wooden door. "And now we've got a place for anyone who's ever felt like they were no one's choice." He pushed the door open. Light poured in. It wasn't just a garage. It was a new beginning, for hearts once thought broken, now beating louder than ever before. On the opening day of the Pine Creek Repair and Rescue Center, there was no rain, but the air hung heavy with something else: feeling. There were no grand backdrops, no loudspeakers or booming speeches, just a hand-painted banner strung between 2 old maple trees, a table with lemonade and homemade cookies Scarlett had baked herself, and the sound of joyful barking echoing across a sun-dappled lawn. Daniel stood at the entrance, sleeves rolled up, hands smudged with grease, wearing a smile he couldn't hide if he tried. Inside the garage, Lucas was showing a group of kids how to paint Titan's paw prints with watercolor, while the German shepherd sat patiently, eyes calm, as if he knew exactly how proud he should be. And then she arrived, a woman in her 60s, silver hair, red-rimmed eyes. She stood still, gazing at a small dog curled up quietly in Kennel 3, blind in both eyes, ears drooping, a dog that had been passed over for adoption 3 times. She didn't speak. She simply knelt down beside the crate, reached a hand through the bars, and the dog nestled into her palm as if it had been waiting for her all along. Scarlett and Daniel watched from a few feet away. No questions needed. No paperwork yet. They knew a quiet miracle had just unfolded. The woman began to cry. "No one wanted him," she whispered, "but I know what that feels like. To be the one no one picks." Scarlett's breath caught. Daniel gently rested a hand on her shoulder. Applause broke out around them. Titan gave a low, approving bark. Lucas laughed with delight, and in the midst of the laughter, the barking, the soft clinks of glasses raised in celebration, Scarlett leaned in and whispered, "It all started with a lost dog in the rain." Daniel nodded. And now, we don't just fix cars. He looked out at the center, at the people, the animals, the joy. We fix pieces of hearts that once thought they'd never beat the same again. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and bathed the old cedar roof of Cedar Bluff in gold, Daniel stood on the porch, fingers wrapped around a small object, neatly bundled in linen. No roses, no candlelight. Just the song of summer cicadas and the scent of scarlet strawberry pie rising warm from the oven. Scarlet stepped outside, her hair loosely tied, drying her hands with a kitchen towel. She smiled when she saw him. A little tense, maybe, but eyes soft as the light at day's end. "You know," he began, "before you came along, there was always an empty seat at this table. Even when Lucas and I sat across from each other every night, that chair still felt empty." Scarlett glanced through the doorway, at the scuffed wooden table. Once 3 chairs, now 4. A new one sat next to Lucas, still smelling faintly of fresh paint, like it had always belonged. Daniel slowly unwrapped the linen. Not a ring, but a small wooden plaque, carefully engraved. "Family guest, the one we chose." "I don't need a big wedding," he said softly. "I just need to know you're here in the morning, that the seat at the table is no longer empty." Scarlett laughed through tears. She didn't need diamonds. She just needed to be chosen. Lucas burst out the front door, wrapping his arms around them both. Titan barked once, tail thumping against the wooden floor in perfect rhythm, and in the fading glow of sunset, 3 people, and 1 very loyal dog, stood together on that porch not because of blood, but because they had chosen to stay. The classroom at Riverstone Elementary was quieter than usual that day. 7-year-old Lucas Pierce stood at the front, his sneakers still speckled with dried mud, and his hair combed in a rush by Daniel that morning. In his hands was a drawing, messy, simple, but holding an entire story. No PowerPoint, no charts. Just a boy standing next to a crayon-colored poster, a shaggy dog, a man with a big smile, a woman with long hair holding a pie, and in the center a boy holding both their hands. "My family story," Lucas began, his voice small at first, then growing a little braver, "didn't start with being born. It started on a rainy morning." He told them about Titan, soaked, shivering, and the way his dad, Daniel, had stopped the truck. He told them about how Titan slept beside him in those first few nights, and about Miss Scarlett, the woman with the sad eyes and the burnt pies who started showing up on Sundays. "At first I thought Titan needed us," he said. "But then I realized we needed Titan too." He paused, looked down at his drawing, and smiled. "And then Miss Scarlett came." A beat of silence. "Titan found us. Then we found Miss Scarlett. And now we found each other." The classroom held still for a moment, then applause. Not because it was a perfect presentation, but because something about it had quietly made its way into everyone's heart. Because sometimes, the best stories don't start with once upon a time. They start with a lost dog in the rain. The journey of Titan, Daniel, Lucas, and Scarlett didn't end with a hug or a ring. It continues every single day, in the bark that echoes through morning light, the laughter under a weathered porch roof, and the stray dogs that are rescued, then find a home. Pine Creek Repair and Rescue Center isn't just about fixing engines or saving animals. It's a place where imperfect pieces find where they belong. A father who once believed he was just getting by now laughs out loud when his son asks, "Dad, who are we saving today?" Scarlett no longer stands beneath stage lights with the title of CEO. Now she stands in a muddy yard, sleeves rolled up, beaming as a puppy licks her cheek. And she's never felt more important. And Lucas? That little boy rewrote the meaning of family with a crayon drawing and one sentence that made a classroom fall silent. Titan found us. Then we found Miss Scarlett. And now we found each other. This story didn't begin with a plan. It began with a small act of kindness on a cold, rainy morning. And if you're hearing this right now, maybe something is on its way to find you too, through a stranger, a lost dog, or a child with a heart that never stopped believing. Let us know in the comments. Who did you connect with most in this story? And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story that just might warm your heart, because sometimes the most miraculous things begin when you choose to stay. Maybe the most precious thing this story leaves behind isn't a magical coincidence or a picture-perfect ending. It's a reminder, soft but profound, that we are never truly alone as long as we still believe in kindness. Daniel only meant to help a dog lost in the rain. He didn't know that simple act would open a door to the sound of his son's laughter returning, to a woman who had forgotten how to let people in, and to a home that would belong to all three of them. Lucas, though just a child, taught us the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes to find one another, all it takes is a heart that never stops hoping. Scarlett gave up the titles, the power, the illusion of control, and chose a life that was real, a life with barking dogs, clattering pans, and a dining table with one more chair, finally filled with love. And Titan, a dog once thought to be simply lost, turned out to be the glue that held together people who might never have met otherwise. Because this story tells us, family isn't just where we're born, it's where we choose to stay. And sometimes the smallest act on the coldest, rainiest morning is the beginning of the most miraculous thing we'll ever know.